Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loki here. Join me today as we divide and move some Speedwell and Allium. So let's go. Speedwell is also referred to as Veronica, and when we're talking about the allium, we're talking about allium that blooms in the late summer, early fall months. The best time to move or divide either of these perennials is in the spring or late summer, early fall months. When it comes to both of these plants, there are so many different varieties or cultivars. This video can apply to any of those. The Speedwell that I have is a very pretty purple colored Speedwell, and I have pieces of it in my rose garden, which gets full sun, but it also gets a lot of overhead water from my irrigation. And for that reason, it did not thrive or do well this year in that area of my yard. I have another area of my yard that's also full sun, and I think the Speedwell will do better there. So the plan for the Speedwell is to dig it up, divide it, and move it. When it comes to the allium, I've only had it for a few years. I planted it in a part sun area. It did okay, but what I noticed about it was since it wasn't very tall, it was planted in an area where I actually didn't enjoy it when it was in its glory and when it was blooming. So for that reason, we're going to dig it up, we're going to divide it, and we're going to move it to an area where I'm going to definitely enjoy it next year. This flower bed is what I call the lilac flower bed because there's a lilac tree in the center there. I planted the allium in the back here. And the reason I planted it here was it was blooming a few years ago and I just wanted some color in this part of my bed. And it looked pretty when I planted it here 2 years ago, but what I noticed this year was I actually missed it when it bloomed. You can see I have 2 plants right over here, and then on the other side of the flower bed I have 2 more allium plants. Let's go ahead and dig them up. It's not a very large plant. I could use this large shovel or I could even use a small hand shovel to do the job. I have some mulch at the base of the plant, so I'm just going to move the mulch aside. When it comes to digging, I don't want to dig right at the base of the plant because I don't want to ruin or break the crown of the plant. So I'm just going to dig out a few inches away from the base of the plant. I can dig down and then over. And then I can just reach under and I want to lift as much of the roots as I can. I'm actually going to take off some of the soil because I don't want to make a big hole here where I've dug out my plant. But if I was to take a whole bunch of soil with me, I could always replace it with new soil just so that this area is leveled. Then we can just clean up our mess and replace the mulch. This allium is called Serendipity. Another popular allium that you see blooming during the late summer months is Millennium, and then there are many other different ones out there. I mentioned earlier that this is not the spring kind of allium that you would see. Those are usually more of a bulb, and this is a little bit different. And I'll show you when we're dividing it what the base of the plant looks like. Even though I am digging out the whole entire plant, if you didn't want to do that, you could always leave the entire huge clump in the ground. You could come in with your large shovel, cut straight down and pull out the section that you want to pull out. And it's okay if some of the leaves break off, the plant will be fine. Even though spring and late summer, early fall are optimal times for dividing these kind of perennials, don't feel like that's the only time. Let's say that you were working on a garden project in your yard, or let's say that you're at someone else's house and it's the middle of summer and you want a piece of their allium. You can take a piece of it at that time. Your plant will undergo a little bit extra stress, but it will be fine. Just make sure you're giving that plant plenty of water. Sometimes we try things in our gardens because we're not sure how they're going to do. I think that's the beauty of gardening, is trial and error, experimenting. And if it doesn't work, it's not permanent. You can always change it. When I originally bought this plant a few years ago, I only bought 1 plant. And it's so great when you can just keep dividing your plants to get more free plants. Here we are on the other side of my house. This is what I call my side walkway. And right next to my side walkway is a side walkway flower bed. Since I walk by this area every day, a number of times a day, I want to make sure that I'm enjoying those alliums year after year. I don't want to miss out on their beautiful blooms. I thought they would look so pretty planted along this side of the flower bed. We recently planted a few types of sedum here. We have the Autumn Joy sedum, looking so pretty, and then we also have Matrona sedum. I thought it would look so nice to dot the Serendipity Allium in between each of these sedum plants. And since we dug up 4 of the Serendipity Allium plants, we definitely are going to want to divide them so we have enough to complete this project. Here are the 4 plants. At this time, if I wanted to, I could come in with my hand pruners and cut the plants back, leaving about maybe 1 inch or 2 inches above the top of the plant. The reason for doing that is just to tidy things up and also to remove the seed heads. And another reason you would be doing that is so that the plant puts its energy into producing stronger roots for next year. However, I'm not going to be cutting these back, and the reason is I want these plants to go to seed, and I want to see if I can collect the seeds from them so I can winter sow those seeds this coming winter. When it comes to dividing your allium, there are a number of ways you can do it. I mentioned earlier you could take a large shovel and you could cut right down through the plant while it's in the landscape and pull out the section that you want. Another option is you could use something like this. This is a hand pruning saw. It's by Corona, but there are a lot of different brands out there, and I just bought this off of Amazon, but a lot of garden centers sell hand pruning saws as well. I could just press this button, open this up, and I could come in and find a place where I want to make a division. And then I could come right in and cut right through the roots. But before I ever use something like a hand pruning saw, I'd prefer to see if I can tug the plant apart and see if it will fall apart naturally. So I'm carefully just tugging at the base of the plant. I'm loosening the roots up as well. And I'm noticing that there's a little resistance. It does not want to fall apart as easily for me. At least this section doesn't. So now let's come in with our hand pruning saw. Let's find a place where we can make a nice division, let's say right over here. And I like to cut down near the bottom of the plant. Now let's go ahead and pull it apart. And we just turned one section into 2 sections. It really is up to you how small you want to make your divisions. You might have felt like this is a good sized plant and you don't want to divide it. Or you might have wanted to divide it into 2 pieces. Or you might want to divide them down into individual plants. It really is a matter of personal preference and what you're doing in terms of your project. I'm trying to tug this one apart to see if it falls apart, and it doesn't. My goal for today is to take each section and divide each section in half. But I know that some of these sections are bigger and some are smaller, and that's okay. When you're dividing any perennial, including allium, it might happen that a section breaks off, like this one here. That's totally fine. It happens. You can put that in your compost pile as long as the plant is not diseased. I'm dividing more than I need for the project that we're going to tackle because I have another area that I might try to put some of these allium. And we have our last one here. Whenever you're using anything like a hand pruning saw or a reciprocating saw, you just want to be careful because you're working with sharp tools. And we just turned 4 allium plants into 8 allium plants. They're smaller, but just imagine they'll double in size by next year. Since the process is pretty repetitive, we'll do one together and then I'll do the rest off camera. I'll show you what they look like when we're all done. At this time of year, since it is late summer, early fall, I like to use Biotone Starter Fertilizer by Espoma. And the reason is I want those roots to really establish themselves well before the ground freezes. I also want to be diligent about giving any plants that I'm putting in the ground this time of year ample water. This flower bed has drip irrigation that runs on a daily basis, so the plants should get enough water. We have our 2 sedum plants over here, so we're just going to move the mulch aside and we're going to be planting the allium right between both of the sedum plants. I'm just using a small hand shovel because you can see that the roots are not very deep. In terms of a planting depth, you want to plant it so that the roots are beneath soil level. You also want to plant it deep enough so that this white part that you see on your allium is also beneath soil level. But then as soon as you see the green part starting, that should be above soil level. So where my hand is, everything below this area here will be below soil level. Everything from this point upward will be above soil level. It's always a good idea to check. And if your hole is not deep enough, go ahead and make it a little deeper. Let's check again, and that's perfect. I'm going to sprinkle in some biotone starter fertilizer. And I'm going to add some water. I can either add it now in the planting hole or I can add it afterwards after I've put the plant in the ground. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to make sure that we're tucking the roots in, and then we can go ahead and backfill. And that's it. And if I wanted to, again, I could give it another drink of water at this time. One of the goals that I've had for this particular flower bed, for many years in fact, has been not only to get a succession of color, spring, summer, and fall, but also to get it so that I have low plants, like border plants, I guess you can call it, towards the front of the flower bed. And then as you move more towards the back of the bed, which I consider the back this way over here, where I have two windows, I want my taller plants over there, with the exception of this one plant here. This is a small leaf rhododendron. This tends to get quite large, so I just need to size control it if I want to keep it in this bed. So I thought it would just look so pretty by us adding the allium in here, because it doesn't get extremely tall, but it's taller than the plants that are towards the walkway. And you know, many of the rules say plant in 3s and 5s, but that costs a lot of money when you're trying to do a project like this. So I prefer to just plant individual plants one at a time, knowing that over time these plants will fill in, and they're going to look so nice once they fill in. And if you look at it from this angle, even though the sun is coming in, you can see what I'm going after here. They're not very tall plants, and the allium will bloom during the midsummer months. And as soon as the alliums go by, then the beautiful sedum, the two different kinds of sedum, will bloom. And I can't wait to see the display of color that this bed will give us next year and all the years after. I did end up with 2 extra allium plants. They're very small, and what I did was I just potted them up in these small little 3-inch pots. They're just pots that I'm reusing. Oftentimes I do that. If I have extra plants and I don't know where I want to put them, I'm just going to pot them up. I'm going to put them in a place where they can overwinter safely. In my case, it's my backyard plant nursery, but it can be anywhere in your yard. The key is, if you live in a cold area like I do, the roots that are in these pots are basically exposed to the elements. So a plant that's in a small pot like this with its roots exposed has a high likelihood of not making it through the winter. What I do is I heal my plants in. You can do that by taking this and just finding a place in your landscape, digging a hole and putting this pot in that hole, and then backfilling on all sides of it. You just want to leave the top part exposed. It's no different than planting this in the ground, except it's in a pot. So just keep that in mind. That's a great way to overwinter plants, especially if you live in a cold area like I do. Here we are in my backyard. This round flower bed is what I call my rose garden. My kids used to have an above ground pool here. When we got rid of the pool, we had this open area. I turned it into a rose garden. I absolutely love it. Even though it's shady right now, this area is considered full sun. In the springtime, I had planted 4 Veronica or Speedwell plants right towards the center of the bed. I thought it would look so pretty having that nice pop of purple color as well as the height right in the center. Unfortunately, because our irrigation sprays overhead, it ends up hitting the Veronica, and the Veronica did not do well. Come in for a closer look and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm pointing to 3 of the plants here. The 4th plant is actually on the other side of the post. And yes, even though they did put out some blooms this year, I want you to see that the leaves on them do not look very happy. I would have kept these plants in here had they put on some growth, had they put on some beautiful blooms. they really just did not thrive. It's not even that the leaves are discolored because of the hard water that I have. It's more that the plants just did not put on a good amount of blooms, and I don't feel that they're going to do a great show for us next year. For that reason, we're going to go ahead and we're going to dig these out. There are certain plants that I can live with the leaves looking the way they look. For example, unfortunately, my roses, they look pretty with their blooms, but they also get hit with the hard water. It's something I just can't fight. But if I'm going to have a plant in here, I need it to bloom for me. There's a slight chance I'm being premature with moving this plant out. It's only its first year that it's been in this flower bed. Perhaps next year it would have put on a glorious show for us. But I know that in the past I've put annual salvia in this bed and it's done really well. I'm going to go back to doing that. So in order to make room for the salvia, we need to remove the Speedwell. The roots are not very deep because we just planted it in here earlier in the season. I'm just removing the soil from the base and just replacing everything. Sometimes you just don't know how a plant is going to do in an area in your garden, but it's worth trying. Sometimes you have to wait a few years, and sometimes you don't want to wait a few years. I have an area in my yard that I call the long border, and it gets full sun, and I feel that this plant will thrive in the long border. When it comes to digging, again, you don't want to dig right at the base of the plant. You want to dig out a little bit, straight down, and then over. If I had this plant in the landscape and I wanted to keep half of it here and divide half of it off, I could have come in with my large shovel again and I could cut right down and pull out the section that I want to divide off. The soil is definitely very wet in this area. And Speedwell is a type of plant that once it's established, it's actually very drought tolerant. It does not like to be in very, very wet soil. When I planted it here, I wasn't really thinking about that. Sometimes that happens. I was thinking more about the color, I was thinking about its height, I was thinking about the sun requirements, but it's so important to also take into consideration soil requirements in terms of drainage as well as moisture requirements. Some plants just don't like it too wet, some plants just don't like it too dry. This Speedwell is a Speedwell that I originally got from my bay window flower bed on the other side of my house. I only bought one plant many years ago, and then I've just been dividing it over the years. That's what's great about perennials. It's like a one-time investment if you want it to be. And then over time you can just keep dividing that plant and it pays for itself. In our gardens, we all run into different issues. Some of us have issues with gophers, with deer. Some of us deal with issues like hard water and spraying on our plants. We can get frustrated, or we can just say, it's all right, that's par for the course, that's what we have to deal with. And how can we make adjustments? Sometimes we have to move plants around many times before we find the right spot for them. And I think that that's okay. That's all part of what we sign up for as gardeners. In a perfect world, we would just be planting everything in the right spot right off the bat every single time. But let's face it, we don't live in a perfect world. And not only that, I don't think gardening would be fun if that was the case. The center of the rose garden has been cleared and is ready for new opportunity. Here we are in what I call my long border. This area is considered full sun. I think it would be a great place to add the Veronica. One thing I want to mention is it is middle of September. Really in this long border, the only main perennials that are blooming are the great blue lobelia. I will say the color on great blue lobelia is very similar to the color on Speedwell, but the Speedwell will bloom earlier, and then great blue lobelia will bloom later. We also have the black-eyed Susan or Rebecca. What I like to do when it comes to my long border is I like to plant a plant in repetition. So when it comes to, for example, the Speedwell, we might have a clump over here, and we might have another clump down over there, and then another clump down over there, and you get the point. And it will go the full length of the long border. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and we're just going to divide one of the Speedwell plants. We're going to get it planted, and then I'll just do the same process with the remaining plants. And we're just going to be sprinkling them throughout this bed. Some of the clumps that we dug up, such as this one here, are larger than other clumps that we dug up. Like this one is a little bit smaller. But since they're already dug up, I'm going to go through the effort of dividing them. When it comes to dividing any of my perennials, I'm always looking for a good place to divide, basically an open area or a break. So right here is an area where I could make a division. I could come in right here and cut. And since this is a large piece, I'm going to attempt to cut this into 3 sections. I'm first going to try to tug and see if it's going to fall apart on its own. And it's not doing that, so let's go ahead and use something else. We're going to use the hand pruning saw, and we're just going to cut right in here. Again, it's up to you on how big you want your divisions to be. This is a good size division for me. If I wanted to collect the seeds off this plant, then I would not cut it back. I would leave this as is, and I would let the plant go to seed so I could collect its seeds. However, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut the plant back. I'm just going to use my hand pruners to cut it back. At this time of the season, the plant is really not going to bloom anymore for me. Therefore, I want it to put its energy into getting its roots established for next year. One thing I want to show you is if you're making divisions to many plants in the fall time, oftentimes you will see some sort of little thing like this. They almost look like little buds or little eyes. That is next year's growth that is appearing there. And that's a wonderful thing. You'll often see it on many plants like this plant or even hosta, lots of different plants, even peonies. So look for that and you'll see that the new growth is there, getting ready for next year. When it comes to a planting depth, just make sure that you're getting all the roots beneath soil level, and then the crown of the plant should be above soil level. But these little purple things that you see here, make sure that you're getting those beneath soil level as well. So pretty much right here would be beneath soil level, and the rest of it would be above soil level. We're going to take this next section. Again, I'm going to see if I can break it apart. Sometimes you can break it apart, and other times you can't, but it's worth trying. Since it's not breaking apart, I'm looking for a good place to make a division. Since I'm going for smaller divisions, I can go ahead and cut it here. And it's going to be the same process I've already shown you. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to divide all my plants up, and in the end I'll let you know how many I ended up with. And there will be times that you have a piece that breaks off with no roots. You can just throw that away, or you might have a piece that has small roots like this. It should still be fine. So we turned 4 plants into 9, which is really good. I could have divided them down smaller, but I chose not to. I want them to be a nice size plant out in the long border. When it comes to my long border, it really is trial and error. I just need to let the plants grow, and I need to see how they look in terms of spacing and in terms of height. I'm adding some biotone starter fertilizer. Again, I want to make sure that those roots are beneath soil level, as the soil is pretty wet because the drip irrigation ran. And I'm just backfilling, pushing down, backfilling some more, and give it a nice drink of water. And we're right back where we started. I got the rest of the Veronica planted along the long border. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what they look like next year in that new space. This is the time of year that you want to walk around your gardens. You want to survey and see where there are gaps when it comes to blooms, or where are plants unhappy, and where are you going to move them? Are there plants that you should be dividing? After all, perennials like to be divided every 3 to 5 years. I encourage you to get out in your garden and start moving around plants, or go to stores. Lots of plants are marked down this time of year. See what kind of bargains you can find to put into your own space. I hope this video gave you some great ideas, and until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.